Washington, and they advocate and they legislate with the concerns of the people who live here, and not the concerns of special interests, not the concerns of donors, not the concerns of anything that may be outside of this district and the people who are part of this district. It's a huge responsibility. It is a huge undertaking. And right now we see time and time and time again that those who have been elected to serve are not doing that. They're serving themselves, but certainly not their constituents. I'm going to share my story with you because I think when I share my story with you, you will understand a lot of what has pulled me into this race. 2 times now, because I ran in 2018 and I'm doing it again. So I'll share my story. I also want to share with you what we did do in 2018, the progress we made in 2018. And then what are we going to do in 2020 to push us over the finish line? And we will push this district over the finish line in 2020. So I grew up very, very poor in South Oak Cliff. For those of y'all who don't know where South Oak Cliff is, it's a part of Dallas that is incredibly diverse, but it also typically has people who were like me, growing up in poverty. I lived in a single family home, or single parent home. My mom did the best she could with 4 kiddos, but we lived in poverty. By the time I was 17, I became somewhat of a rebellious teenager, and I made a choice to drop out of high school and run away from home. And I did that. My senior year of high school, I dropped out of high school and I ran away from home. About 6 months into being a runaway, I got pregnant. And I knew I had to go back home. I knew that the child that was growing within me, I did not want her to experience the life that I had. I also knew I wanted to go to school, go back to school. So back home I went. And my mother greeted me with open arms, loving arms, and she said, "Julie, I will do whatever it takes to help you with this child, but you have to go back to school." And so back to school I went my senior year, pregnant. I graduated 1 week after giving birth to that little girl. I had her in Parkland Hospital in Dallas, and I don't know if you know what being a Medicaid mom is like in 1990, but in 1990, if you're a Medicaid mom, you labored in a room with about 15 other mothers laboring. You got a private room when you delivered, but then you went back to a recovery room with about 15 other moms who were recovering. Then you went into a semi-private room, and you stayed 3 days. So very, very different in 1990 as a Medicaid mom. We still don't provide enough healthcare services to moms who are Medicaid moms. And I sure wish that we could get to universal healthcare coverage so that you didn't have to have a Medicaid mom, you didn't have to have an uninsured child, you didn't have to have a person who's 64 who doesn't quite yet qualify for Medicare, needing healthcare services that they don't have access to getting those healthcare services, and they certainly can't pay for it. I did know that I wanted to go to college. And in 1990, there were federal programs available that helped get me through college completely debt-free because we did not have a college fund in my family. By the time I got pregnant and I was having a baby, my mom, who had been a teacher, she taught music in Dallas Independent School District. She had retired early, no insurance. She was not 65, and she started cleaning homes. So we didn't have health insurance in our family, and there was no college fund in our family. But I will tell you, in 1990 to 1995, when I graduated college, Pell Grants were incredibly generous to young ladies like me. I also qualified for the Earned Income Tax Credit. It was incredibly generous for moms like me. And between the 2 of those, I was able to get through college completely debt-free. And I tell you what, your investment in the Pell Grant through your taxes, your investment in the Earned Income Tax Credit through you paying taxes is what you changed the course of my life. Thank you. I'm serious. You changed the course of my life. Think about it for a moment. Think about the life of a 17-year-old girl who gets pregnant. Her opportunities are highly limited. Think about the job I would get if I was not able to go to college. Minimum wage, probably no health insurance. Now I want to tell you what you've done for me. And I want to tell you about the little girl that I had when I was 17. That little girl turned 29 this past May. She's graduating from TCU with her doctorate in nurse anesthesia. I am grateful for what y'all have done to help not only me, but to help my beautiful, gorgeous 29-year-old daughter, Nikki. I'm so incredibly proud of her. So where did life take me after that? Well, I went on to law school. I decided I wanted to go to law school. I did not get out of law school debt-free, but I went to UT, which was an incredible bargain in 1995. Tuition back then was, I think, $1,500 a semester. It was awesome. Those are the days. When I was in law school, though, I take a deviation. I got pregnant twice in law school. I was married by this time, but I got pregnant twice. I got pregnant the first year of law school, had my son the second year of law school, got pregnant the third year of law school, had my daughter right after graduation. I finally figured out what causes pregnancy. It was too much school. It was just way too much school. But the little boy that I had that second year of law school is why I stepped into the race in 2017. I call him the walking pre-existing condition. He was born into neonatal intensive care at St. David's Hospital in Austin. By the time he was 5, we discovered he had an a heart condition. By the time he was in 9th grade, we discovered he had an immune deficiency. That immune deficiency, until we could get some sort of management, there's no cure for it, management of it, took him out of high school for 2 years. 2 years he couldn't go. He lost about 40 pounds in this time. He slept for about 18 hours a day because he could not keep calories inside of him to give him energy. I feel so fortunate that he is starting his second senior year at Texas State, but I'm grateful that he is able to go to college and be in his second senior year and about to graduate. I'm very, very proud of that little man because I know how hard it was for him. On a physical level, I know how hard it was for him. He's why I got in this. I spent 15 years working for a private hospital system, the largest for-profit hospital system in the United States, HCA. They affiliated with St. David's in Austin. I spent 15 years in their finance department. And I know we can guarantee every man, woman, and child in America health care coverage and pay a much lower price than we do now. I know that. I know it from the number side. When people say, how do we pay for it? We already do. We have universal health care in America. It is called our emergency room. When people don't have insurance, where do they go? The emergency room. And whether that's for an ear infection or a heart attack or a stroke, people end up in our ERs. And that is where they seek health care when they have no insurance and no ability to see a doctor. And so working within that space for 15 years, along with having a child who has some special health needs, is what pulled me into the race in 2017 when congressional leaders were debating repealing the Affordable Care Act. Now, the Affordable Care Act is not a perfect piece of legislation by any stretch, but it does protect folks with pre-existing conditions from discrimination by insurance companies. And the thought of my little boy not being able to see his cardiologist, the thought of my little boy not being able to see his immunologist for the rest of his life, or to have to be put in a high-risk pool of people and either decide, do I want to buy a home someday or do I want to have an insurance plan, pulled me into this race. Mama Bear came out. But I tell you what, I've met a lot of other mamas and daddies who are struggling the same way our family did, and oftentimes with far worse conditions. They have kids who are truly medically fragile, like Ben Sears, who lives in Mueller, in Austin, who was hit by a car when he was crossing a street at the age of 9. He survived, but with a traumatic brain injury. Matt and I got to visit them in their home. They have what looks like a hospital room and a ground floor bedroom. They use 3 nurses a day, 24-hour care. He's a $3 million kid after 2 years. Ben is now on Medicaid. He's a managed Medicaid child. And managed Medicaid, because we've pulled in the private sector to take most Medicaid cases in Texas, managed Medicaid will give him neurological therapy 2 times a month. His own neurologist says he needs it 8 times a month. His own neurologist has prescribed it 8 times a month. Medicaid will not pay. Managed Medicaid will not pay. The private insurance company behind it said, no, our doctor said he can get by with 2 times a month. I know what Ben is like. Ben doesn't get to speak to his family. Ben eats through a feeding tube. Those are hard decisions for a family. To think about, are you going to pay for your kids' medical care? Or are you going to put food on the table? Or are you going to pay for your electric bill? We don't have to do that in America. It's not a zero-sum game. It's like, well, we have to have private insurance companies, or something terrible is going to happen, and America's going to collapse. Not at all. So that's the reason I got into this race. And the reason why I've stayed in this race and decided to give it another go is because we have a lot, huge challenges facing us. But every time there's a challenge, there's an opportunity that presents itself. And I know that American ingenuity and creativity can stand up to the challenges that are facing us presently. And whether that is immigration, climate change, educating young folks, healthcare, creating an economy that works for everybody, we can meet this challenge. But we have to have somebody in this seat who is committed to doing that work. So what did we do in 2018? Got my car, traveled 45,000 miles, no joke, 45,000 miles between 2 cars. One car got stolen about midway through the election. It was campaign brain, y'all. I left my key in the car and the car unlocked. Right in front of our house, it got stolen. But between 2 cars, put 45,000 miles on my car. And I don't know, this is our district, y'all. We are down here. This is Fort Worth, right above this border. That's Fort Worth. I've taken this drive. I've been to a Wimberley Indivisible meeting that I had to leave last time and drive straight to Burleson, which is right here, where that little nodule is. Burleson is here, but they have a little bit up there in Tarrant County. It's about a 3.5-hour drive, top to bottom. I've done that twice in one day. I've come here several times. I've gone up there several times. In 2018, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm going to be honest with you. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never stepped into the political world. I had no political aspirations whatsoever. I was an active voter, but beyond that, I didn't know what to do. So I drove, and I met people in Burleson, and Cleburne, and Hillsborough, and Killeen, and Coppers Cove, Gatesville. Lampasas is over here. You have Marble Falls and Burnett here. We have 13 counties in our district, y'all. 13. I went to all of them. To date, I've been, since May of this year, I've been to all of them. Because it's important. It's important to meet people where they are. It's important to not force them to come to you. And I'm grateful that you all showed up today. You came. And I'm grateful that y'all opened your home. But it is so important to meet people where they are. And allow them to have a safe space to ask their questions as they want to ask them. Not in a filtered way. Not with showing your ID first, which is what our congressman requires people to do if they're going to come see him and ask him questions. That's not democracy. That's not representative democracy. And I'll tell you, some of the best conversations I've ever had with people are here in Wimberley. I went block walking last year. I actually went to the wrong house. I went to the wrong house and I spoke to a man who said, I started handing him my push card. He goes, "You're a Democrat?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Take that back. I don't want that." And I said, "Well, I could conceivably be your congresswoman in November. Is there anything you want to talk about that's important to you?" And he goes, "Well, I'm a devout Catholic, so I'm pro-life." And I was like, "Okay, well, what else?" And he goes, "Immigration." And I was like, "Great. Because you told me you're a devout Catholic, then I know you know what the Bible says about taking care of the foreigners among us and taking care of widows and orphans." And he looked at me, his eyes got big, and he comes out on his front porch and he sits in a rocking chair and he just starts rocking and he starts telling his story. His wife died 2 years ago. He himself had had a heart attack a year ago, a massive heart attack. He's not 65, he has no insurance. He was supposed to die. It was a widowmaker heart attack, that he survived. Very, very rare to survive those. And he goes, "And I know why I'm here." And he points his thumb into his house. He goes, I have a 35-year-old son with Down syndrome in there. And I know I'm the one who has to take care of him. There's nobody else. His brother died. And so I said, sir, I know you said you would never vote for a Democrat, but I can tell you with absolute certainty, and you are welcome to go on to my opponent's website and see his stance on Medicare and Medicaid. He would like to cut payroll taxes in half, which would cut Social Security and Medicare in half, because we're a pay-as-you-go system. There's no huge trust fund for either. We pay as we go. So if you cut payroll taxes, you're cutting Social Security taxes and Medicare taxes, which fund Social Security and Medicare. Easy as that. He doesn't believe in expanding Medicaid. And in fact, he was holding up Medicaid payments coming to this state and chip renewal coming to this state because he doesn't believe that government should have any involvement in any health care, even if it's a 35-year-old son with Down syndrome. By the end of our conversation, I was walking away and he goes, can I have your push card? I need to remember your name. I never argued with him. I wasn't going to. It's not my place to argue with a voter. It's just not. Another interesting conversation I had was in Copper's Cove, Coryell County. A guy, Matt, you remember this, we got a text message. We were sending out a text campaign, and a guy said, for a healthcare town hall that I was hosting in Lampasas, which is maybe a 20-minute drive from Copper's Cove. And he goes, I will never go to a town hall. Those things are rigged. The candidate only asks the people that they know will give them softball questions. I'm allowed y'all to ask me questions, and I'm not going to, hit me hard, okay? And I said, he goes, but if she comes to my house, I might consider voting for her. So to his house, I went between Meridian, Texas, and Lampasas, Texas. And I come to a gate that has an AR-15 and a no trespassing sign. And I call him first, and I say, Tony, I'm at a gate that has a gun and a no trespassing. He's like, is that your car? Come on in. So I go in. We sit on the porch. His wife is riding around on a horse with a pistol on her hip. He's on the front porch. His adult son, his adult daughter is on the front porch. They are very much a family that is into concealed carry reciprocity. If y'all don't know what concealed carry reciprocity, it's being able to go across state lines with a concealed weapon in your pocket or belt, in your belt pocket or whatever it is. Yes, thank you. Sorry, holster or just even just your waistband. Sorry, waistband. A lot of people shoot themselves by just trying to put it in their waistband.
Yes, they do.
They do. So holster. Without having to be licensed in another state. And so I, again, don't argue. I listen. And then I start asking him questions. Because I knew that he and his wife had served at Fort Hood. And I said, well, you had a tremendous amount of training in your military career, right? Yes, I did. Were you allowed to walk around with firearms at Fort Hood? Of course not. No, it's highly regulated. So tell me about your weapons training at Fort Hood. So he said, we go check out a weapon, go to target practice. You were not allowed ammo until you were actually at the place where you're stationed to do your target practice. As soon as your target practice was done, you took the ammo out and handed it back to the person, then you went and you put your weapon away. And I said, Tony, I trust you with a gun. You've had years and years of training. I was like, and Texas has a proud history of gun ownership. And I know a lot of times in rural Texas, you need a rifle to deal with some of the animals that come onto properties. I said, but do you know that in some states, anybody can just go buy a gun and then come here, drive straight to Texas and do something with that gun without any training, without any license requirements, nothing. And that's what concealed carry reciprocity means. If somebody has no licensing restrictions or training restrictions, they can buy it and then they can come here. And he starts, like, his face just kind of like, Julie, that's a good idea. And I said, what's that, Tony? He goes, if before somebody had to buy their first weapon, before they go in to buy it, they had to do extensive training to buy it. I was like, Tony, that's a really good idea. Do you think I can use that on the campaign trail? Tony, no joke, the day before the election texted me, good luck, this is Tony. And I don't think if he was not going to vote for me, he would have wished me good luck. These are the stories. I mean, I can recite story after story. It's great to be surrounded by people of like mind, but it is even it's even more important to have a meeting of the minds that you don't think that you will necessarily ever find common ground with. And part of this is finding common ground because we are all one unit. in this oddly shaped district that looks kind of like a jalapeno, kind of like a tornado. That was 2019. So what does 2020 look like? And then I promise I will open it up. In 2020, all these little blue dots that you see on this map are areas where we have unregistered Democratic voters. People who have moved either inter-district from outside of the district in, or interstate into our district, who have not registered to vote. We're working with the data team. Robbie is here. He's part of that data team. I always point you out. Thank you, Robbie. We're working with the data team who did a pilot in 2018 to get folks registered to vote. They did it in 3 state house races. Vicki Goodwin, James Tellerico, and John Busey. 3 state house races where there were Republican incumbents, Democratic challengers beat them. Part of it was the strategy. They got in total, 156,000 people registered to vote. Do you know what Texas's turnout rate is for voting, roughly? About 50%. About 50%. Do you know what that demographics group of voting turnout was? 80%. This is a game changer, y'all. And it's the right thing to do. It's the civically engaged thing to do. Expanding the electorate, inviting more people in. We were in Killeen last weekend, getting people registered to vote. Killeen, it sits on the outside of Fort Hood, has a lot of people who are either stationed at Fort Hood, or they actually are civil workers who go to Fort Hood every day and work. Highly transient, highly democratic, highly dense. We were there last week and we had such a successful 1 hour, because it got too hot and humid to do it much longer, 1 hour of getting people registered to vote, that we're going back next weekend to do it again. And we're doing this with volunteers. I think how many volunteers do you think we had? 25 show up in Killeen?
Yeah, we were able to register 20 voters within like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's like 2 hours, going on door to door, you might get lucky to register 1 voter. You don't know what their partisan is either.
Yeah. So we registered 20 voters in the span. I was only out there an hour.
Yeah, I mean,
it was really, really hot. We actually had one guy chase us down in his car. He goes, "Are y'all the ladies registering people to vote?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "I need to get registered to vote. Let me pull my car over." He got registered to vote right then and there. We're going to keep doing this, y'all. That is our plan. Expand the electorate and then go meet people where they are, get out the vote. So when you want to know how you can get involved in our campaign, help us get people registered to vote. We have stuff on our map all the time of ways you can get involved to volunteer. And then we also, when it's time to get out the vote and actually talk to your neighbors, stay in your neighborhood, go talk to them. It's highly effective. And it invites people into a process. Many times, especially in this district, you have so many people who have felt left out of the process, like the people who live here in East Austin. I met a woman in Killeen, she's like, "I haven't voted since Obama's first term." She's like, "Nobody represents me." Do you know how discouraging that is to hear? I'm like, oh my goodness. I said, "I want to invite you back in, and I want to come back to you again and again and again. And I want to hear what you're at." I said, "What is important to you? What would get you to the polls in 2020? She goes, "Our schools suck in Killeen." Her words, "Our schools suck." You know why their schools suck in Killeen? They are highly dependent on something called Impact Aid. Impact Aid is a federal program that when a large military installation like Fort Hood is stationed or takes up a lot of property, pays no property tax dollars. Property tax dollars are what fuel our schools. Betsy DeVos, in her first budget, wanted to take Impact Aid. It's a $1.2 billion program a year, and cut it in half to $600 million. It did not come out of committee that way, but it got cut in the House committee by $100 million a year. $100 million a year. Not only should we not cut school funding for kids of servicemen and women, they should be having the best education that money can buy. These are people who literally, quite literally, like you, Steve, put your life on the line for our country. Your kids should not be shortchanged. Because I'd rather take a donor check from Wells Fargo than listen to the people who live in the 3 precincts in Killeen that are part of this district. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. I feel like I've talked for a long time.